Welcome back to Empower Indie Podcast. This podcast creates space for honest conversations about health, well-being, and community resources to help people in southwestern North Dakota live healthy, full lives. The Empower Indie Podcast is produced by Women Empowering Women, a nonprofit organization dedicated to connecting, supporting, and educating women to help them become the best versions of themselves. To become a member or learn more, visit wewnetwork.org. Today's conversation is for parents, caregivers, and anyone who has ever wondered, is my child developing the way they should be? Or felt that quiet instinct that something might need a closer look. The early years of a child's life can feel exciting, overwhelming, and sometimes uncertain. And while we hear those first few years are important, many families are left wondering what that really means, what to look for, and where to turn if they have questions. Let's get started. So joining us today are Sarah and Jessica from the Kids Program, who work directly with families to support development, build confidence in parents, and meet children right where they are in their everyday routines. Thank you guys for being here.
Thanks for having us.
Okay, to start off, can you tell us about the Kids Program and the families that you serve?
Sure. So the Kids Program is an early intervention program that is free to families. My families you want to know about, well, they're everyday families like you and I. I think I enjoy them most because they are ready to learn. They're eager to learn. They have lots of questions. I just love being able to be in their environment where they're at and help them through things that they decide are important to them. I just love watching kids grow and, being able to be where their toys are, where their, kitchen is, where all their things, and then helping parents kind of use what they have around the house to encourage that development in their kids. We have young parents, old parents, first-time parents, parents who have 5 and 6 kids. Just really doesn't discriminate, I think.
So early intervention is a service that's provided. So our federal government wants to make sure that if there are kiddos that need a little bit of extra support, that there are services that are designed and monitored by our state and the feds to make sure that they're getting good service. And so that's what early intervention is serving birth to 3. And our federal government has even wanted us to take a look at prenatal diagnoses and supporting those mamas that might have some knowledge about something that their child might need after birth, but maybe they get that diagnosis still when they're pregnant. And so setting up all of those families for the most success with intervention and support.
Okay. So why are the first 3 years of a child's life, that 0 to 3 window, so important for development?
So I'll take this. The role that I serve for the Kids Program is as an experienced parent. So I don't hold any special professional hat or have special letters after my name that qualify me to be able to intervene and support a family. But what I do know is in those first 3 years, it's like a critical time for that brain development. That's when the most brain connections happen in a human's life. And so the earliest intervention also produces the best outcome. Now, that doesn't mean that if there's a kiddo with profound needs, that intervention isn't needed. There still can be some impact in that development too. Mm-hmm. It's not just the kids that are barely maybe not meeting those developmental milestones. It's really all kids that might have some extra support needs.
Okay. How does your program support development within a child's everyday routines?
I think that's the greatest part about our program is that it's home-based or even environment-based, right? So oftentimes we're in your living room on the ground with you. We're with you in the bathroom when you're trying to give your child a bath. We're, at the supper table while you're feeding them. But also we do some daycare visits so we can see, maybe daycare is struggling with different things that you're struggling with at home. So we can kind of help daycare provide, help in different routines. I think the other thing that's important is knowing people come from all over the place. So people's routines are different. What you do on a daily basis for a bedtime routine is different than what Sarah might do with her kids. And so, that to me is a big advantage, that you're not coming to us in an office. We get to jump into your life and what you're doing and help you with what you need help with or want help with, not what we think you need help with. So that to me is a big advantage of in-home early intervention.
A plan is also set,
Yes.
and so goals are determined by the family. And something that you said earlier that I love is that it really is the family that's helping determine what those goals are or what is important to them. So it might be a worry that they have about an upcoming medical procedure, or it also might be, I want to learn about advocating with my child's physician about a goal or a target that they want to be at. And so then the early interventionist helps provide that support to get there with that whole team of service. So if there's a family who part of their routine is to gather eggs,
Right.
then maybe it's figuring out how this 2-year-old is involved in that with maybe holding an egg without breaking it or something.
Yes.
Where it might be something that happens just naturally as part of the day. We all have routines in our day. It might not be like, at 8 o'clock I'm waking, right? Or 5 or 4 o'clock, right? My morning routine sometimes surprises me. But it also might, so it might just be like, well, when I wake up, I go make coffee. It's not necessarily like Sarah has to do this, but sometimes we just develop natural patterns. And so then the early interventionists and other support staff just go and try to meet the needs of those times of where the family might want that child to be involved or engaged in that activity.
So how do you think that building that parent confidence changes the outcomes for those kiddos?
I think the biggest thing, I like to think of the interventionists, I think we become professional listeners. We have the time, when you go to the doctor's office, you have an allotted time. When you go to your outpatient therapy, you have an allotted time. We also have an allotted time, but it's an hour usually, which is a long time. And so I think we have time to sit and listen to what the parent is asking, and also just to kind of ask them more questions, just to dig more deeply into, what is the difficulty you're having in these routines, or also the teaching part I think is really important. Like, I had 4 kids, raised them all to be adults, and when I joined intervention, I learned all the things that I wish I would have known when I was a mom. I was like, well, that one needed OT and this one needed PT, and man, I missed the boat on that. So I think it's just like having extra eyes too. Yeah. And I like to just think of early intervention as a tool in your toolbox as a parent, combined with, I think we become really good communicators, as far as we're like a great liaison between the doctor, and the outpatient. And so often I talk to outpatient therapists about the children that I'm dealing with, what's going on there? What are you working on there? What can I do at home? They don't have a lot of time sometimes to talk to mom about how she could implement the ideas. So I think we're kind of helpful in that way too. It's just, I like to think of us as someone who's in your side pocket, like we're always there for you when you need to, ask a question. And I think the more you can give parents information, the more power they feel, the more confidence they have, right? The other thing I really want to reiterate, because I do think people worry about someone's coming into my home. We don't criticize your cleaning skills. We don't look at your home that way. We're not criticizing your parent skills. Like, I think that might be one of the biggest worries that parents have, like, you're coming into my house, right? We just want to help you have the confidence, because you already know, you're the parent, right? You're the one who knows that child better than anybody. So we just want to give you a little bit of tools and advice to help you feel that confidence and to know that you are the best person to teach that little one.
I joked around with our interventionist. So was told ahead of time, and my kiddo was hospitalized for about 5 months before he first came home, that we were getting a PT and that was going to be our interventionist. And so I was all prepared for this like muscular, strapping young man. And this like, I don't know, she was like in her late 50s lady shows up with gray hair. And I was like, well, I guess the coffee's always on and beer's always in the fridge. This is our home, right? Because you're welcoming them into your home environment, which shares the beauty of what happens in that home and remembering. I think that reminder that this is a home, it's not a clinic setting. And so we're going to embrace the place that this kiddo is at and help out this family. But also, I think one of the beautiful things that happens is the relationship that's formed with the interventionist, because you are with that family potentially for 3 years. And so you get to celebrate the growth and the milestones that happen. But there also, with that relationship, becomes this trust where a mama that might be feeling insecure about a decision, or that she just might want another person to bounce ideas from. I think that happens because we have this person in our home every week, where we're working on similar goals. We've identified those together. And so there also is that trust to say, like, you know what, I'm really worried about something. Can I talk to you about that?
Right.
And sometimes that happens while we're doing dishes together because that's the need. Or maybe it's help a kiddo learn how to sit up or something like that.
So what are some early signs or subtle indicators that a child may benefit from extra support?
It could be a whole host of things. It might be something that a physician identifies with a checklist, right? When you go and you fill out that form of if your child is doing all of these activities. Or it might be something that would automatically qualify a child for early intervention, that the parent might learn of a diagnosis or something, or have a watchful eye because of a heart condition or something like that. Or maybe that's a preemie baby.
Right.
And so there might be really obvious signs, but there also just might be like, we're not quite talking, or we're not quite moving around in the typical pattern.
What kind of advice would you have for a parent if they just have a gut feeling, or they just feel like things aren't quite where they should be and they're not sure what the next step would be?
I am a firm believer in a parent gut. I think if you feel like something might be off, get it checked out. The screenings are free. I love that a lot of times a parent may have one concern and we'll do a screening and that wasn't, but they found something that you didn't even look at. I think oftentimes as parents, we're so busy in our day, our own life. And, most people have more than just, this is my one child and this is all I do all day, right? So most people are super busy. So there's little things that they could miss, either because life is busy or because they don't know. I had one mom say, well, he doesn't have a pincer grasp. Why is that a big deal? So it's kind of neat, right? Because there are things that you will find. And it's not necessarily, I think one of the biggest misconceptions of early intervention is that it's for severe disabilities only. And yes, like you said before, severe disabilities, absolutely, but also just delays. And I think oftentimes people think my child has a delay because of something that I did, which is another misconception. And a thing that I really want parents to understand is most kids, a lot of kids have a delay in some area, and it's not because of you as a parent and by any means. We just know with lots of research now, like if we catch it early on, the earlier the better, the faster we can get them caught up again.
Right.
So
there might be those kiddos that need lifelong support
Yes.
that are deserving of the intervention.
Absolutely.
But there also might be some kiddos that with the right intervention, they get right on track with all of their peers. And so that's a wonderful thing about early intervention, is that it encompasses both.
So a lot of times the fear of not knowing how the process goes is a deterrent. So kind of walk us through, like, once the referral's made by, a parent or a provider, what does that look like for that family after that?
So typically the referral goes to our human service center, or it might go to our right track providers. And so that's a program that does those screenings that can check to see on a checklist where that child is at. And if there's a lot of areas that need support, then they might make the referral to that human service center to say, I think this kiddo is going to qualify for early intervention. Through North Dakota, we have developmental disability program managers, because if the kiddo qualifies for the early intervention services, which is determined through evaluation with professionals from the kids program and that DDPM, then they get a whole host of services, which includes some health insurance, to help pay for some of those medical costs that might just be incurred because of that child's development. And it's really just a phone call that then sets up the evaluation for somebody to come into your home and see where that kiddo is or baby is at.
And oftentimes they will, look at the referral form and they'll call you right away, and then they'll give you the option of right track if you want to start there, or you can go straight to early intervention. Either way, right track's a great service too, because they will come in, once a month and just like right track, make sure that your child is on the right track. And if they, like she said, if they do find something, then they can refer you. But if you've already been, told by a physician or told by an outpatient that, hey, we see this little red flag here, even an orange flag, and you want to be screened, you can just get a screening and just have an assessment done. It's pretty painless, I feel like.
I think it works really well for catching things early, because even with, as a provider, like I get 30 minutes with them.
Yeah.
And to go over a checklist and have mom remember everything that she might have noticed, or that gut feeling she had 2 months ago that now she forgot about and doesn't mention it. Having someone come more frequently often catches things that like the right track or the kids program will message or send a referral, or a report saying this is what we found. And it's like, they didn't mention anything like that. And we didn't see anything like that on their exam. So making sure that there's more eyes on that kid and on all of the kids really is really important. And I think it's helpful.
I think the fear behind all of that is that nobody wants to fall into a world where they think something's wrong, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think that even for those kiddos that, because like when a baby is born, the first thing that is asked is like, how's mama doing? Is everybody happy and healthy, right? Well, what if that path is not health? Right. What if there's like really big medical intervention needed? Or even if it's just a mild delay, that feeling of like, well, is it something I've done? Is it something that I've missed, right?
Right.
But that feeling of like, well, what's wrong with my child? I think that that's really a misnomer, but because it's really, we all need support in our life, every single human being. And so for these kiddos, they just need it a little bit earlier on. And so why not wrap that family with a whole bunch of services and support to offer that help without saying, well, this is what's wrong with your kiddo, because that's really not what the language is. But I think that's what the fear behind it is.
Okay, what happens when patients or families do find these challenges? Is it worse in rural communities than it is in other places? And then how does this program kind of bridge that gap?
So I think we're so prevalent in rural areas. Obviously, that's where I'm at right now. A lot of us log a lot of miles because
get some windshield time.
We do, yes, yes. Great podcast to listen to. I can try. Plug. No, I think it is more difficult in rural areas. I think a lot of like where we're at in Hazen and Beulah, we don't have a PT, a pediatric PT, I should say. We don't have that. So a lot of people are having to drive to Bismarck, which is an hour and a half, to get that PT therapy. So we don't provide therapy, but we do have PTs. So I think the greatest part is, as the parent, when you are writing up your child's plan, you get to decide, what disciplines do I need? Do I want some OT? Do I want PT? Do I want some speech? Can I get a nursing consult? There's so many different consults that you can have where you can have the PT come into your home with your with your home visitor, so that they can say, my PT asked me to do these exercises. I'm a little uncomfortable. Can you show me a little bit about, to make me feel better? Or do you have another idea? Or this really isn't working. We don't go back for 2 more weeks. Or I just think having, again, that person be able to come to you instead of, for our families to go to Bismarck for an appointment, they basically have to take a full day off of work by the time, they're getting down there. And so this way it's, an hour in there where it fits for them because they're picking their time that we're coming. And, it's not another visit. The other disciplines come together with the home visitor. So, you have that comfortability of meeting a new person too. I just think the rural areas benefit from this in so many ways.
When there aren't the resources available, these are just brought in and handed right to the family.
Right.
But it also, I think, addresses exactly what you talked about earlier of like, well, in a clinic visit, you're not going to experience that gathering of the eggs, right? But you can do that with a PT to really practice some of those skills that are naturally happening within that family of doing that all together.
Yeah. How do you see changes happen in the families that go through your program?
I think that the growth that the child makes, but also the goals of the whole family get accomplished.
Right.
So when we set goals for our kiddo, it wasn't just about like identifying a literacy goal for him. We also identified how we all love reading and could do that together while still working on some of those literacy pieces that are important for development for our son. But it was about feeding the dog, and it was about other areas of growth in more than just mobility or fine motor or speech. It was also strengthening us as a family to learn how to help him learn and grow.
I love within our families, often I'll come for a visit and I'll show, everybody what we're doing. And the next time I come, one of the older siblings will go, Miss Jess, come look what I taught her today. And they were working on what we were working on, right? I think the greatest change that I see in families is often when we first start, it's often just mom that's at the visit. And as we continue to go through the visits, then dad might join, grandma might join, big sister is joining. Now pretty soon you have grandpa who's like, use a pincer, And I think it's so great to watch it become like a whole family experience where it's not just mom or it's not just us and mom, but the siblings want to get in on it. And the greatest thing is you can be like, what, mom is really busy, so we're going to work on catching. Do you think you can work on catching with your little brother? They think that's great, right? And plus mom is like, yes, please work on catching because I'm doing the dishes or I have, laundry. So my greatest watching families grow is just watching everybody from the family take part in that little person's development.
Beautiful.
Yeah. What can happen if these delays are identified later instead of earlier?
The most prevalent one that I see is speech. So there's a lot of delayed speech, things. And if you're not a speech therapist, you don't really know what am I supposed to be looking for. Well, when you watch speech develop, it starts small from something like, blowing raspberries and, sticking your tongue out like mom is, or copying, mimicking some of those gross motor things. And, that happens around the 10, 11 months. And if that isn't happening at 10, 11 months and we miss it, and now they're 18, 19 months and they haven't done that, oftentimes it's hard for parents to help their child with speech because they're trying to make them say words, right? Instead of going back to where it has to go to, which nobody would know unless you were fluent in speech development. And so I think sometimes that might be the hardest piece is, we're a little farther behind. And to me, it's never we don't freak out about it, right? It's just knowing where to start. And I think that's where earlier intervention really can step in and be that help, because regular moms like me, I didn't know, what was the first step in speech. If you are a year and a half or 2.5, you're 2.5 years old and you're not saying any words, I'm like, say ball, say, because I don't know. So I think early intervention is great with helping you go meet the child where they're at and work with them from that spot forward.
Okay, so if a parent's watching this and has even a small concern, what is the best next step they can take?
Well, hi, Mom. Hi, Dad. I think it's picking up the phone and calling either the Human Service Center or the kids program or the Right Track to say, could I get one of those free screenings? Right? It's pretty harmless in the end. And if it's determined that kiddo's meeting all of those needs, then you can cross it off. And if there's support that can be offered, then that's also free and available to families.
So early intervention is not about something being wrong. It is about giving your child and your family the tools to thrive, starting early when it matters most. You do not have to figure it out alone. Support is out there, and it can start with just one conversation. Thank you guys for your incredible work you do, and thank you to our listeners for being here. This episode was made possible by a small, innovative grant through the North Dakota State Council of Developmental Disabilities. Until next time, stay informed, stay empowered, and we will see you on the next Empower Indie podcast.